Faculty of Arts, including all the organizational and also technical team, and also the Shaken team for inviting me to present today. So what I will present today will draw from the conceptual and empirical research of my first year of PhD research, and also prior experiences connected to shared creation practices in contemporary dance. So I define shared creation practices in contemporary dance as processes or projects that involve differently skilled or bodied dancers, so-called amateurs and professionals, to create choreographic work together collectively with specific attention on participation to decision-making and also knowledge-sharing processes. So in these processes, I'm exploring the following question. So which practices of sharing and or producing knowledge are being developed in urban, Western, contemporary dance shared creation projects? So in Western science, especially biology, medicine, and so on, and as well as in bodily practices, the body is mostly defined as an instrument, as an object or a property with one universal substance or reality. Edmund Husserl, an Austrian philosopher, made a distinction between the material body and the lived body. And in German, for example, these are defined by two different words even. So there's a clear distinction between Körper, which is the body as biologically constructed with muscle, bone, tissues, nerves, and so on, and Leib, which is the body as it is sensed, and lived by the subject. So for Sondra Horton-Freley, I just quote, this lived body theory provides a means towards overcoming dualistic concepts of dance, which regard the body as an instrument, movement as the medium, and mind or soul as the mover or motivational source for dance. These lived body concepts hold that the body is lived as a body of action, and movement cannot be considered as a medium apart from an understanding that movement is body, not just something that the body accomplishes instrumentally as it is moved by some distinct inner separable agency. So contemporary dance is actually based on a particular attention to the lived body, especially in these shared creation processes. Through different exercises, teachers or leading artists are often inviting participants to explore their body and movement to develop a so-called kinesthetic mode of attention or kinesthetic awareness. And this is also often connected to very particular images of the material body. For example, what I could hear is like, feel your skin on or from the inside and your breath that passes behind your heart, or try to make it conscious what you are bending and when you are bending, and also focus on your spine, or visualize it, get an awareness of it. So it's often that artists or leading artists are using these kind of images. So then consciousness is here marked as an activity through a perceptual attention to felt body movement based on a supposed common knowledge on the material body structure. So as if we all know where our spine is, which we hopefully do, but yeah. So a growing trend now in dance practice and also collective reflection consists in rejecting this idea of one universal body structure, and thus one universal way of feeling, sensing, and perceiving the body. For Isabelle Ginot, researcher in dance and somatic practices, so I quote her, somatics doxa does not pretend to restore a so-called natural or original body, but rather contributes to the reorganization of the multiplicity and heterogeneity of which we call the body. In addition, this kinesthetic awareness is not either on or off. It is more marked as a threshold phenomenon as it occurs where the endless stream of imperceptible perceptions turns into conscious apperception. And in contemporary dance, this is also experienced through what we call focal gaze or peripheral view. So as what Stark Smith calls telescoping awareness, it is the ability to shift between narrow and wide views, from an up-close sensation to perceptions of the wider world, in order to be able to be attentive to details of the environment or to a global perception of what happens around us. So I would propose now that we engage in a small experience so that you can sense a little bit what I'm talking about. So I will do it with you. So I will maybe just join you here. If you can hear me. Will it work? Thanks. And so I will invite all of us to close our eyes together. And just try to shift your attention to your sitting bones. So sitting bones are the bones you are sitting on. And try to feel or think about how do your sitting bones touch the chair? And what weight are you putting on these bones, and how is this weight being carried onto the chair? And then maybe also thinking about how is the chair touching you? Then moving maybe a little bit more to the environment. Try to imagine or visualize or feel what is below you. So what is below your feet, or even maybe further down. What or who is on your right? What or who is on your left? And what would be above you, or what is above you? Okay, and as the last thing, we will just put our hands in front of our eyes so that everything is even darker. And once everything is dark, you can open your eyes inside your hands. So you will look at your hands actually. And then really, really slowly start moving your hands away from your face, while always looking at your hands. And maybe there will be a time where you feel the need to shift and to look more to the environment than on your hands. Okay. So that was the first kind of experience to sense. So this awareness to the environment, to space, other humans and non-humans is also often referred to as listening in contemporary dance practice. And this act of listening is not just limited to acoustics. So as Gabriele Brandstätter, German dance and theater researcher, explains, it is a synesthetic network of experiences of the body, of its internal and external states at rest and in movement. It is an action and an event at the same time. So in English, we have maybe hearing and listening. And if some of you speak German, we even have more. We have zuhören, hören auf, horchen, lauschen, and so on. Thus implying the reference to the self, as well as the reference to the other and to the space. And I think this is particularly interesting in collective improvised dance. So this question of how can one be aware and listen to others while also be conscious of their own movement, body sensation, and position in space. So in my experiences, both as a participant and also as an observer, it appears that these processes are very difficult to be formulated with words by leading artists, which goes also back to your question maybe. So primarily used to create choreographic parts in absolute unison, which means that everybody is doing the same thing in the same rhythm, the same movement. Verbal illustrations such as so that you get a feeling of each other, or until you feel each other, or being together means feeling each other, often do not lead to the desired result. So then bodily exercises are proposed to develop this collective feeling of each other. So one example is working on one horizontal line, which is often used, in the same rhythm, stopping and starting again without deciding it beforehand or communicating about it. This can seem really easy explained like this, but it's actually really difficult for most groups. And another exercise that I also have observed and experienced several times is walking throughout the room with different directions, different trajectories, and then trying to stop altogether, and then starting to move again with the same speed. Maybe these are things you all also know. So unfortunately, we can't do these exercises now. But I would propose that we can maybe do another experience that we can do at our place. So I will do it with you again. And so the idea we'll first explain and then we will do it. The idea is that we will close our eyes again all together and then try to stand up together in the same time, in the same speed, without talking to each other or communicating with some signals. Okay, and then once we stand, once we feel that everybody stands, we can try to sit down again all together. Okay, so we can close our eyes. Okay, let's do it just once again with our eyes closed. Okay. So now we'll do it once with our eyes open and see what is different maybe. And without trying to have someone leading, but really trying to decide it all together. Okay.
Someone is leading.
So maybe what we can observe, or maybe what you can observe, is that with open eyes it's maybe easier, because you could maybe follow somebody, but is it then still a collective decision in an act of active kinesthetic awareness and listening? Question. So these basic practices of listening are then supposed to be activated in more complex movement structures and space shapes in dance, especially in shared creation processes or projects that are not organized around one choreographer who would decide on the choreography alone, but around collective production, sharing and structuring of movement. This relation is really essential. So to this end, most projects work with individual or collective improvisation. In one group I observed, for example, the leading artist proposed to experiment with the feeling of getting pricked on different parts of the body. So this exploration was first conducted in pairs, with one person pricking the other and the other one reacting to it, like this, for example. And then in the second step, one person created an improvised dance based on this memory of the sensations of the first exploration. And the group formed a big circle around her or him. Then they were asked to collectively react to the solo dance in the center, and very diverse situations occurred. So for example, in some improvisations, the people that were around the person were just being very still or doing small movement. Or in other ones, they will do big movements towards the person, for example, going into the space. So in these processes, I'm asking the following questions. How do dancers respond to movements of the group? And how do different expressions, conceptions of the world and intentions circulate in these processes? So I then introduced the concept of kinesthetic empathy, which is defined as a permanent active process linked to kinesthetic stimulation, enabling one person to feel or experience the movement of another. And for Edward Titchener, who's a British psychologist, this process activates even when you are not, when you haven't gone through the experience of the other. So that means that imagination composes like an authentic feeling by drawing on the perceptive memory of past experiences, which are distinctive but can be recomposed. And this emotional projection would be a way of overcoming the essential alterity of the world that gives us a sense of familiarity with what surrounds us and acting as a third mode of knowing, beneath external and internal perception. So for me, what's interesting is, can this empathy only happen between two subjects, with one who feels and the other one feeling for them? Or could it also be enlarged to collective processes? So I'm now concluding. It becomes really clear, I think, in this kind of perceiving and thus acquiring knowledge about the self, the other, the situation, the environment can't be easily explained and or defined by dualist categories such as active, passive, body-mind, sensing-thinking, me, them, knowledge, and practice. So in these experiences, we can completely define who or what made us stand up or sit down, how our bodies engage with each other, with the space around us, the gravity and material below our feet, and so on. So they make us attentive to the limitless flow. That is one aspect of the pluriverse. And as Arturo Escobar, author of Pluriversal Politics, The Real and the Possible, explains, we base our conventional notions of what is real on a belief that we interact with the world as individuals separate from the world, so that the world seems somehow external, outside of us, like a predictable context with which we move about freely in our Western societies. And so I'm trying to understand in my research how bodily practices that are fundamental to collective contemporary dance might enable to conceptualize reality as networks, assemblages, and meshwork social natural complexes in which the human and the non-human are implicated with each other in complicated and ever-changing ways, instead of well-defined and more or less permanent structures. Thank you.